Before a woman's life transforms, she doesn't feel more certain. She often feels more sensitive, not louder, quieter, not more confident, but more questioning. This is not a breakdown, it's a spiritual calibration. We are taught to look for life-changing moments in achievements, relationships, or major life decisions. But real transformation starts subtly, like a gentle shift in the wind. You don't notice the change at first, but you begin to feel it in your nervous system, in your conversations, in your cravings for space, in your sudden intolerance for what no longer aligns. This is the wisdom of the body, the whisper of the soul, and the surrender of the ego, meeting all at once. So before you think something is wrong with you, pause. What if what you are feeling is not confusion, but awakening? There comes a time in every woman's journey when the world begins to grow too loud. Not necessarily because it has changed, but because she has. The noise that once filled the silence, the distractions, the voices of others, the unending demands, starts to lose its grip, and in its place emerges something far more profound, an invitation to stillness. This is not the stillness of inactivity, but the stillness of presence. It is the first spiritual shift. A quiet but powerful transformation begins when a woman starts to seek her own company over the chatter of others. The inner silence grows louder. At first, she may find it uncomfortable. Many women, especially those who have spent years nurturing others, children, partners, colleagues, are conditioned to ignore their own inner voice. Their attention has been outwardly focused for so long that the return inward feels unfamiliar, almost selfish. But here lies the misunderstanding. The silence she now seeks is not an escape from life, but a reconnection to it. Neuroscience teaches us that the brain's default mode network, the system that lights up when we are not focused on external tasks, becomes more active during rest, introspection, and solitude. It is in this space that we begin to access memories, envision possibilities, and process emotional depth. When a woman finds herself craving time alone, not to isolate but to reflect, it is a signal that her soul is preparing for expansion. I once spoke with a woman in her late 50s who shared that she had always filled her day with errands, meetings, and social obligations. But after her youngest child left for university, she found herself sitting in her kitchen in the quiet hours of the morning, without a list, without a task, without anyone needing her. And for the first time, she didn't feel empty. She felt whole. It was strange, she said. I thought I would feel sad, but instead, I felt returned to myself. This is the paradox of the first spiritual shift. What feels like withdrawal is actually reunion. It's a return to a voice that's been whispering all along beneath the noise. And for women who have spent years bending to the will of others, that voice may at first be small, but it is steady. It says things like, slow down. This isn't you anymore. Let's take a breath. We've been carrying too much. Eastern philosophy has long honored the sacredness of silence. In Zen tradition, silence is not an absence. It is presence in its purest form. The Tao Te Ching teaches, silence is a source of great strength. When a woman begins to feel her strength in quiet rather than in reaction, she is awakening a new layer of her being. This does not mean she loses her fire, her ambition, or her voice. It means she now chooses when and how to use it. Relationally, this shift can be both liberating and challenging. The people closest to her may notice she is no longer as available, not just physically, but emotionally. She no longer entertains conversations that drain her. She no longer says yes out of guilt. She begins to retreat, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. This can confuse those who are used to her constant giving, but it is necessary. For spiritual change to occur, boundaries must rise as noise falls. One woman described this stage as feeling like being underwater while the rest of the world is still shouting from the surface. She could hear them, but it was distant. Her attention was turning inward, toward the rhythm of her breath, the pulsing of her own heart, the sensations in her body. She had spent years learning to respond to everyone else's emergencies. But now, for the first time, she was listening to herself. Emotionally, this can feel like a reckoning. Many women in this phase report a sudden awareness of how much they have been carrying. Mentally, physically, spiritually, the silence reveals everything that was suppressed. Tears may come, often without a clear reason. Fatigue may surface. The body, finally out of fight or flight, begins to unwind tension that had become so familiar it was invisible. From a physiological standpoint, the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest, digestion, and healing, activates more frequently, and with it comes a flood of information the woman hadn't had time to feel before. But this is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. Relationships take on new meaning during this shift. A woman may no longer tolerate surface-level interactions. She may find herself seeking depth, conversations with meaning, friends who can sit in silence without the need to fill it, a partner who honors her stillness rather than trying to fix or interpret it. She stops needing to be understood by everyone, because the deeper she goes within, the more she understands herself. Psychologically, this phase aligns with what Carl Jung described as individuation, the process of becoming more whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. For a woman, especially one who has lived in service of roles, mother, wife, caretaker, professional, this is a sacred unraveling. She is no longer content with living half-truths. The silence helps her remember who she was before the world told her who to be. And here is something important. Not everyone will applaud this shift. Some will misread her solitude as depression. Others will accuse her of being distant, aloof, or cold. But this too is part of the process. A woman must learn that protecting her peace is not a betrayal. It is a necessity. Her worth is no longer tied to how accessible she is to others, but how aligned she is with herself. And when she starts to feel this inner silence rising, gently, insistently, it is a sign, not that her world is falling apart, but that a deeper world is waking up within her. A world where she listens before she speaks, where she observes before she reacts, where she chooses herself, not selfishly, but spiritually. And as the silence grows, so does something else, a discomfort with what once felt familiar. This is the second spiritual shift. Old attachments begin to feel foreign. What she once chased, she now questions. The relationships she once clung to no longer feel nourishing. The roles she played so well start to feel like costumes. Her identity begins to peel, not because she's losing herself, but because she's outgrowing an outdated version. And this, too, is sacred. There is a moment in every woman's transformation when she looks at something, perhaps a long-time friendship, a job, a romantic relationship, and says quietly, "This doesn't feel like home anymore." It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it has to be destroyed. It simply means she has changed, and her inner world no longer fits inside the shape of her past. Attachment is not love. This is a distinction many women only learn after heartbreak. Neuroscientifically, attachment bonds are built in the limbic brain, the emotional center. They are formed through repeated emotional experiences, even unhealthy ones. So when she begins to detach, not with resentment, but with awareness, it feels uncomfortable. It feels unnatural, because the brain is still wired for the old pattern. But here's the truth. Just because something feels familiar does not mean it is good for the soul. I remember a story of a woman who stayed in a relationship for over a decade because, in her words, he knew me. But when asked if she felt seen, supported, or safe, she hesitated. "I'm not sure I even know myself anymore," she admitted. And this was the turning point. Knowing someone is not the same as growing with them. If the bond remains stagnant while one person evolves, the attachment becomes a tether, and tethers eventually begin to choke. Psychologist Dr. Sue Johnson, the pioneer of emotionally focused therapy, explains that emotional connections must be responsive, accessible, and engaged. When these are absent, the connection begins to fray. A woman who is spiritually shifting starts to notice this lack not as an irritation, but as an intuition. Her emotional needs are no longer about comfort. They are about connection, real connection. She may find herself withdrawing from certain social circles, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Gossip begins to feel toxic, shallow talk, exhausting. She no longer laughs at jokes that degrade others. Her energy refuses to play small. She starts to crave truth, not just in words, but in presence. Eastern teachings often use the metaphor of the snake shedding its skin. The old skin is not wrong, it served a purpose. But when the time comes, the snake cannot remain comfortable in what it has outgrown. In the same way, a woman cannot pretend to be fulfilled by a life she has spiritually moved beyond. This shedding can be painful. Sometimes it means letting go of people she deeply cares about, Sometimes it means sitting in the unknown before the new arrives. But the space she creates by releasing the old is what makes room for the new to enter. And here, emotionally, she must practice compassionate detachment, not the cold cutting away that some misinterpret detachment to be, but a gentle, respectful acknowledgement. I honor what this once was, but I no longer belong here. In this, she is not abandoning others. She is returning to herself. And sometimes, the most powerful way to honor love is to stop pretending. A woman I once guided through meditation shared a beautiful moment of realization. After years in a marriage that had become distant, she said, "I realized we were trying to keep something alive that had stopped breathing a long time ago. And maybe love now means allowing each other to breathe apart." That was not failure, that was freedom. Spiritual growth does not demand destruction. It invites truth. And truth often demands distance from people, patterns, and places that were once her world. So when a woman starts to feel this dissonance, when the people, conversations, or roles she used to enjoy begin to feel heavy, it is not a sign of regression. It is a sign that her spirit is ready for something more. And this more doesn't always mean doing more. It often means being more aligned, more discerning, more faithful to her intuition. Because the soul does not evolve in chaos, it evolves in clarity. And clarity comes when she can stand inside the silence of her own awareness and feel everything that no longer fits, and lovingly let it fall away. She enters a space and feels it before her feet touch the floor, the subtle weight of expectation, the faint pulse of someone else's need, even an undercurrent of tension between two voices at the other end of the room. It's as though her senses have sharpened overnight. This isn't imagination, it's emergence. She is becoming hyper, aware of energy exchanges. This is the third spiritual shift inviting her into a profound transformation. In the past, she moved through interactions as if she were invisible, or worse, like wallpaper. Present, but unacknowledged. She lived in a world of spoken words, missing the unspoken currents beneath them, the anxiety in a sigh, the defensiveness behind a smile, the fatigue in a gesture. But now, those undercurrents speak loud and clear. Neuroscience confirms what she's feeling through mirror neurons and empathic resonance. Humans literally feel one another's emotional states. She finds herself responding to other people's tension with her own muscles tightening. When joy enters a room, she smiles before she even realizes. Slowly, she becomes like a conductor tuning into the orchestra around her, not to lead or judge, but to sense and respond. With awareness, with intention, and above all, with compassion for both herself and others. She notices this most palpably in relationships. She used to invest in others as if she were a vessel, constantly pouring herself into their cups until she had none left. But now, she feels the energy that ricochets back. She senses immediately when she's being leaned on more than asked for. She feels the friction between friends that hasn't been spoken aloud. And she discerns the emotional price of saying yes when she really wanted to say no. In a quiet coffee shop, she recognized this shift when a friend began recounting a long, exhausting story of complaint. Instead of nodding along, she felt an internal alarm, a sudden heaviness in her chest. It wasn't anger, it wasn't guilt, it was clarity. And from that clarity came a question. Are you okay with me listening right now? What surprised her most was not the question. It was the power it held. It reclaimed her presence from the inertia of passive listening. There's a short study in interpersonal neurobiology that shows co-regulation. Two people's nervous systems sensing during conversation can lift mood or deepen stress. She's become aware of this deeply. She understands that offering empathy means offering presence, not pouring water from an empty cup. Her intuition becomes a guide. She senses when the energy in a room shifts from warm to wary. She knows who needs encouragement, who needs space, who is silently guarding. In intimate relationships, this can be revolutionary. Instead of responding to words alone, she responds to the emotional ecosystem unfolding before her. The shift brings relief, but also responsibility. She learns to listen not just with her ears, but with her nervous system. She guards her energy with gentle discipline. Rest when she's overstimulated, leave when the emotional climate becomes toxic, and seek presence when it's nourishing. This sensitivity extends into her own patterns. She becomes attuned to the energy she brings. She can feel when she's bringing frustration into a conversation before she says a word. She's more aware of her breath, her posture, the tone of her voice. She practices simple realignment, a pause, a deepening of breath, a turn inward to comfort herself. So her presence becomes a gift rather than an unconscious imprint. Her personal relationships become laboratories for spiritual practice. In a romantic context, she notices how energy flows change the entire tenor of connection. When she enters tired, stressed, or distracted, intimacy shrinks. When she centers, even for a moment, the quality of the exchange shifts. It's no longer transactional, it's connective. And yet, becoming so sensitive also means she's more vulnerable to emotional storms. She learns to differentiate between her energy and the energy of others. She practices containment, holding space for another's pain without letting it flood her. She strengthens her capacity for self-regulation. She comes to understand that to maintain her physical, emotional, and spiritual health, she must act as both empath and protector to herself. Alongside this subtle awakening comes another shift, nearly imperceptible at first. The desire for approval quietly dies. This is the fourth spiritual shift. In the past, she was governed by external benchmarks, compliments, achievements, starring in someone else's story of her success. Self-worth was measured in likes, in praise, in how well she fit into the narrative of others. But as she grows energetically aware, she realizes that this approval is expensive. It demands performance. It invites anxiety. It threatens authenticity. Her amygdala, the part of the brain that registers threat and reward, had been conditioned to light up at applause. But now, the brightness of external praise dims next to the warmth of internal alignment. This is not arrogance, it's sovereignty. It's saying, I will be guided not by what people say I should be, but by what my intuition knows is true. Social psychologist and researcher Brené Brown speaks of wholehearted living as embracing vulnerability and letting go of who we think we should be. She reminds us that striving for approval is often rooted in shame. They must love me if I am enough. But as shame loosens its hold, freedom emerges. She finds surprising freedom in the freedom from needing freedom. In no longer needing approval, relationships shift again. Conversations become real. Her moods no longer ride the wave of feedback. She notices a quality of lightness. There's room for her to mess up, to be human, to grow, without fear of loss. She watched this manifest in her role at work. In meetings where she used to speak as if auditioning, she now speaks as if bearing witness to what is true. She can share an imperfect idea without fear of judgment. She notices that honesty invites connection, and ideas that carry authenticity often land deeper than polished perfection. Physiologically, this also eases her system. The rush of adrenaline she used to chase with praise slows. Her cortisol levels no longer spike as much in social evaluation situations. She describes a newfound calm in the deeper layers of her nervous system. This is emotional sovereignty in practice. The space between stimulus and response grows, and she lives more in that space. This freedom doesn't mean she is immune to fear or insecurity. It means she's learning to welcome those feelings rather than be guided by them. She still feels vulnerable, but she no longer cowers under the spotlight. She stands quietly, with integrity, even when eyes are on her. In a personal example, she recalls a gathering where she was the only one without a director's title. As introductions were made and accolades shared, she felt the familiar ache, should I even be here? But this time, when asked what she did, she took a breath and spoke from the heart. She shared her work, imperfect, emergent, driven by purpose rather than prestige. To her surprise, what followed was engagement. A person approached her afterward and said, "You seemed so real." That was powerful. That moment was a turning point. Not because of what she heard, but because she felt something shift inside her. The need for validation had loosened its grip. She realized her presence, authentic, humble, curious, is her truest value. In relationships, this also transforms how she loves and is loved. Without the demand for approval, she gives love more freely, not to receive but to root. She sees a partner's flaws more clearly, not as threats, but as doorways to deeper connection. She stops editing herself for acceptance. She begins speaking from her soul, and yes, sometimes that voice trembles, but that trembling is real. Her emotional discipline grows. She still cares about her partner's perspective, but she stops tailoring herself to fit expectations. She communicates what she needs with clarity rather than apology. She sets boundaries from self-respect rather than resentment. And when conflict arises, she no longer reacts from a need to salvage image. She responds from a desire to renew connection. This is where emotional connection deepens, not in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of trust. When approval loses its grip, we risk being ourselves, and that authenticity invites trust. We learn true intimacy is not earned, it is given. When two people allow each other to land safely, even in imperfect light, the neuroscience of trusted connection supports this. Secure attachment arises when partners feel seen and accepted without needing to perform. She now invites this presence into all her relationships. As these two spiritual shifts unfold, sensitivity to energy and release of approval, the nature of her life changes vibrationally. Her personal relationships become microcosms of growth, arenas for authenticity, humility, and trust. She feels more alive in tension and more attentive in stillness. She holds her own energy consciously and lets change come quietly, like dawn breaking through the night. And she senses that these shifts are the threshold to deeper work, to somatic listening, emotional sovereignty, and surrender. The next stages of her inner unfolding, when a woman begins to sense her body isn't working for her, but speaking to her, she has entered a profound territory, an intimate dialogue between the flesh and the spirit. This is the fifth spiritual shift. Her body starts speaking the truths the mind has been resisting. And if she listens, everything shifts. She might first notice in whispers, a tension there, a plea here, an unexplained fatigue she can no longer ignore. It's not that she's suddenly weak, but that her internal wisdom is growing louder than her habitual defenses. The signals are somatic: a clenching in her jaw after a tense meeting, a dull ache in her abdomen before she allows herself rest, her chest tightening in conversations she's been avoiding. The busy noise of life muffled these cues before, but now, she can't not hear them. Our bodies are not passive vessels. They are intricate biometric storytellers. Traditional Eastern philosophies have honored this truth for millennia. When the mind resists, the body insists. The ancient yogis taught that physical ailments often conceal emotional root causes: grief, fear, resentment. Western science is beginning to confirm it. Research in psychoneuroimmunology shows emotions influence immune function. Suppressed angst manifests as persistent tension. Her body doesn't lie because it doesn't filter. It speaks raw truth. One woman described waking every morning with a heavy weight across her shoulders. She dismissed it as stress. But one morning, while brushing her hair, she realized it felt like shame. It was the shame she carried from a relationship she'd left unresolved. For years, she was told she overreacted, that she should forgive and forget, even when forgiveness wasn't earned. Her body lugged her discomfort long after her mind had justified her silence. When she finally gave voice to that hidden story, the tightness began to untangle. The spiritual significance is immense. She is learning to reframe suffering, not as a breakdown but as initiation. Her physical aches are rungs on the ladder of awareness. Each one, once felt and acknowledged, brings her closer to self-honesty, kindness, and liberation. Imagine a couple who struggled with communication. Every evening, they'd dine in silence, the air thick with unspoken frustrations. She'd go to bed heavier than when she woke. He'd avoid eye contact, anxious she would bring up that subject. Again, neither displayed raw emotion. Their postures were games of control. They became physically ill, her migraines, his digestive issues. In therapy, she learned that her migraines flared at the precise moment she unconsciously repressed her hurt. When she began journaling emotions before bed, her body halted its protest. The migraines stopped. Their relationship shifted. She realized my body was the first to know. Physiologists call this interoception, the brain's ability to perceive internal bodily sensations. Strong interoceptive awareness predicts better emotional regulation. In practice, she begins to notice, I'm bracing my stomach, I'm lifting my shoulders, I'm holding my breath. Then she stops. She inhales slowly, loosens her jaw, releases the walls she didn't know she'd constructed. The connection to her body becomes a pathway to clarity and courage. And in relationships, somatic listening changes everything. She stops meeting conflict intellectually. I'm upset because you did X. Instead, she says, I feel a tightening here. She speaks less from assumption and more from felt truth. When you cancel plans without telling me, I tighten here, I lose breath, I feel dismissed. Such statements invite soft attention. They disarm rather than accuse. They open space for understanding rather than defensiveness. The body becomes the messenger, not the blame. A friend told me about her marriage going through difficult years after their second child. Dinner conversations were fraught. Parenting disagreements arose like small storms. She felt constantly exhausted, even after rest. Eventually, she joined a weekly yoga class taught in somatic awareness. On the mat, she learned to trace her breath into places she had been neglecting: her lower back, her diaphragm. Over months, her chronic fatigue lifted. She realized her exhaustion wasn't due to physical strain only. It was mental. She'd been unconsciously carrying the weight of trying to be perfect. In every role, the yoga taught her compassion, not just for herself but for her partner. She began sharing her sensations. Today my back feels tight. I think I've been carrying our expectations again. Their conversations softened. His replies no longer felt like blame. They were curious. They began to navigate stress as a team rather than opponents. This is also the terrain where emotional discipline becomes embodied. Her body taught her before her mind did, and now in response, she learns to choose differently. When stress rises, she doesn't push through. She honors it, she pauses, she breathes, she moves, she rests. She checks in with the canvas beneath her clothes, her breath, her pulse, her temperature. Weakness is no longer failure. It's data, a message that something needs attention. Rest, connection, boundaries, or forgiveness. In relationships, this isn't always easy. There are times when loved ones misinterpret her pause as rejection, distancing, laziness. She can feel their confusion as bodily tension within her, but she holds it. She neither explains nor excuses. She just says, I'm listening to my body. Over time, these self-attuned pauses become shared language. Her partner no longer asks why she's withdrawing. They ask gently, "Are you okay?" and sit quietly beside her, holding space. This layered presence transforms connection. She is no longer trying to fix her body with pills, distractions, or relentless productivity. She is listening, she is responding, and she is teaching others to do the same. The alchemy begins within. She becomes her own source of care and witness. It also alters her relationship with the world. When anxiety rises in a room, she senses it. But she no longer absorbs it unconsciously. She feels where it hits her, a flush in her chest, a tightening in her throat, and she self-soothes. Through breath, gentle affirmations, a short walk, she becomes a field changer rather than a field farer. Instead of reacting to emotional climates, she influences them with grounded presence. Real transformation happens when she stops living in her head and begins living from her body. When she shifts from rhetorical arguments with her mind to actual conversations with her bones. There is a growing tenderness that comes when one listens to the body's soft language. She starts trusting what her cells say over automatic thoughts. She learns, anger isn't always mind-made. It's a fire in the belly. Restlessness isn't always ambition. It's an exhausted nervous system. The body doesn't speak in metaphors. It speaks in the words she needs to feel. One partner shared that his wife's somatic clarity changed how they navigated conflict. Previously, arguments ended with blame. Now they start with witnessing. I see you tensed up when I said that. What's happening in your body? She then senses and shares. My belly clenched. Maybe I felt shame. Now they reply to root issues, not symptoms. They no longer leave the table wounded. They leave curious. Her emotional resilience expands. She becomes more capable of holding space, not just for herself but for others. In circles of grief, she feels tears rising for another person, but she knows they are not her own. She can hold another's pain without sinking. That kind of presence doesn't happen in the head. It emerges in the creative field of felt awareness. This shift also invites a re-evaluation of wellness. She no longer chases a supercharged fitness ideal. Instead, she pursues integrated health, mobility, rest, breath, emotional attunement. She's less interested in calories counted and more in sensations felt. She asks, how do I want my body to feel in this moment? If the answer is ease, she pauses. If it's clarity, she deepens her breath. If it's peace, she stills. This is not self-indulgence, it's self-reclamation. And as she exercises this new relationship with her body, everything changes. She sleeps better because she listens to her tiredness. She eats slowly because she tastes her break. She moves mindfully because she feels life streaming through her veins. She loves more deeply because she is no longer afraid of being felt. Her body becomes her home, and from that home she can be present in every sphere, in quiet mornings, in challenging conversations, in intimate touch, in collective gatherings. Each bodily signal is a messenger, each pause a portal, each sigh a prayer, and she is awake to all of it. She is awakening. Her transformation is not up ahead, it is live, moment by moment, breath by breath, cell by cell, friction by friction, release by release, in the countless stories that have yet to be told, and in the ones just beginning to be felt. She reaches a moment when the currents of her life feel unnaturally rigid, plans locked, outcomes forecast, expectations arranged like a carefully placed row of dominoes. Every stride seems to be steering toward a destination controlled by the mind's itinerary, not the heart's unfolding. It is here, in the tightness of planning and the illusion of control, that she encounters the sixth spiritual shift. She surrenders control and embraces flow. Through a delicate unraveling of effort and a humble permitting of inner timing, she enters a deeper dimension of living. A dimension where purpose is not pursued, but awakened, where presence guides direction, and where alignment becomes the greatest power. The shift is subtle, often arriving as a quiet question. What if I let this be messy? It emerges not as an act of giving up, but of letting go of friction with reality, not resignation, but response, not escape, but entrance into life's intimate dance with change. In Eastern philosophy, this is the path of the Tao. Lao Tzu offered a soft invitation: those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. The deep wisdom he points to is in knowing that knowing isn't something you create. It is something you receive, and it arrives most honestly in stillness. She begins to see that her life, while unique, is not a construction of her will. It is a revelation of something already living within her. One woman in her early 40s described this moment during a period of transition. After 2 decades in corporate leadership, she found herself approaching burnout. Success felt like a cage. She'd mapped her next career move: 9-figure budgets, global recognition, and a seat at a boardroom table. She chased it with discipline, but the closer she got, the more vacant she felt. Then, one morning, in the stillness before dawn, she felt a gentle but inignorable question: is this yours? The seat was hers to take, or to leave. She closed her eyes, listened, and felt her heart leaning towards something softer: coaching individuals, not firms, nurturing potential, not profit. She didn't have a plan for it. She had a curiosity, so she paused. That pause led to a coaching certification. A year later, she left her corporate role with a deep tremor of fear and freedom coexisting in her bones. She had stepped out of external alignment and into internal flow, into uncertainty held by purpose. This kind of letting go isn't a crash. It is a trust fall into mystery, supported by the bones of her own awareness. In relationships, surrendering control transforms connection. She may have spent years shaping conversations, orchestrating emotional climates, and strategizing responses. She may have practiced emotional engineering, preparing empathy, rehearsing apologies, building safety nets. But there is a tenderness in not forcing the moment. She learns to allow silence to speak. She discovers that when she meets her partner's eye, without the script, something more truthful arises. She allows her questions to emerge in real time, rather than pre-writing them to navigate his mood. She melts the defensive grid she once wore, trusting that even if the exchange cracks, goodness can enter through those fissures. There is a family who, for years, kept a calendar of celebrations, emotions, confrontations. Every meeting, every conversation planned. It was exhausting and sterile. When a crisis finally erupted, a teenager's turmoil, a parent's health scare, they realized the calendar offered no support. So they stopped holding everything together and began holding nothing together. They met, when it felt right, with openness. They shared where they were, how they felt. They cried. They paused. They held space for gentleness. Over time, they discovered something astonishing. They missed no moments. They hadn't lost control. They had discovered connection. The alchemy of presence transformed chaos into cradle. Psychologically, this is a move from external locus of control, the belief that outcomes are governed by planning, manipulation, or force, to internal alignment, which trusts that life is orchestrated by forces larger than her mind, but responsive to the heart's resonance. She learns to steward her energy rather than engineer outcomes. And she discovers that this way of being invites resilience. One of the paradoxes she learns is that control feels like power, until it doesn't. Releasing control reveals the deeper power of authenticity, fluid trust, and unshakable presence. Physiologically, this shift calms the sympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for fight or flight. When she relinquishes the need to outperform or out-predict life, her heart rate slows, her breath deepens, her vagus nerve activates. She rests in a crust of confidence, not built on effort, but on openness. In intimate relationships, this creates invitation rather than imposition. Rather than leading every conversational dance, she stands in the middle of the floor and invites the dance partner in. She asks, "What do you feel here?" Rather than asserting what she feels. She holds her own seat at the table and leaves an empty one for the unknown. The invitation is not only to another, it is to life itself. This shift also teaches patience, not the patience of resignation, waiting for someone else to act, but the patience of response, waiting for life to show its face so she can see it clearly before reacting. She practices deep presence in the face of uncertainty. She rests in the tension of the unknown until clarity arises, not forced, not fantasized. When her career falters, she doesn't scramble for a map, she sits. She tracks her breath into her heart to feel where the impulse wants to move. She notices the aliveness in small curiosities, a magazine article, an unexpected conversation. She plants seeds in the dark. She watches them grow. This shift does not demand she abandon vision. It only asks that vision be married to listening. Plans become poems, not rigid helixes. Intentions become prayers, not defects demanding execution. In coupledom, this means learning to ask good questions. What is here? This is what I feel. What's alive for you? What are we resisting? These questions become gentle ways of inviting shared awareness. Instead of launching discussion, she resists control and models response. She teaches through presence what she longs to deepen: trust, curiosity, co-creation. She becomes like a river guide, not steering the water, but feeling its flow and naming its lines to the people in the boat. She notices when the current shifts. She speaks into it with clarity. It feels calmer over here. Or she speaks into fear. I hear the rapid. Are you feeling fear too? She fosters communal presence in the stream of change. In families, this shift moves parenting from leading to accompanying. She notices when a child resists and she breathes. She doesn't rush to remedy, she offers presence so the child learns to feel and respond, not obey. She creates the spaciousness where the child's agency arises. In friendships, control masquerades as help. She recognizes when she's trying to fix someone's mess rather than simply sit through the mess with them. She holds invitation instead of solution. Invitations come as questions, not opinions. What is the hardest thing for you here? Would it help to sit with it? Becomes a balm. And in the most intimate chamber, her own soul, she surrenders the myth of self-madehood, the idea that she must earn life to deserve it, that every blessing must be sculpted by struggle, that every pivot must be rationalized. She sits in her presence and whispers, I'm here. And what unfolds from here is enough. It is here that the body and mind align, and something deeper than intention begins to emerge: alignment with life's whisper. She learns to attend less to the question, what should I do? And more to, what wants to be real right now? She senses her pulse in the stillness and carries that pulse into her day. She responds rather than reacts. Her choices become invitations rooted in felt truth. Her work, her relationships, her rest, her presence, all begin to move in the cadence of flow. Sometimes she steps forward, sometimes she steps back. Always, she feels, and in the feeling she knows, stories emerge. An artist begins painting not from idea but from silence. A doctor begins listening before diagnosing. A mother begins holding space instead of instruction. A partner begins asking, what's it like being you today? Instead of, what did you do? These actions are not revolutionary. They are evolutionary. They are quiet. They are driven by recognition. Life happens in the openings, not the closures. This is not passivity. It is hospitality. Hospitality given to the present moment. Holy, tenderly. She learns to lean into the pause, the question, the empty seat, the unplanned change. And as she does, she discovers that flow is not randomness. It is realness, not formlessness. It is faith informed to arise, not weakness. It is a strength rooted in spaciousness and empowerment, not because she shapes every outcome, but because she shapes less. The current carries her, and she carries kindness to herself, to others. Her struggle becomes a teacher. Her vulnerability becomes a portal. Her presence becomes a place others want to arrive into, not because she explains things perfectly, but because she creates space for things to come alive. Each unfolding step tests her. She stumbles, she steadies, she rests, and she listens again. She doesn't need to know what comes next. She needs to feel what is here now. And in that feeling, she begins to trust, not her strategy, but her soul. When a woman begins to experience these 6 spiritual shifts, her life changes not from the outside in, but from the inside out. She is no longer defined by her circumstances, her relationships, or society's definitions of worth. Instead, she becomes rooted in her own truth, guided by deeper knowing, and in alignment with divine timing. Her strength no longer comes from control, but from surrender. Her beauty no longer needs to be seen, because it is felt by her and by everyone who stands near her. She stops performing, she stops becoming, and in becoming, she embodies the most powerful form of transformation: quiet, steady, unwavering authenticity. She begins to listen to life, not just with her ears, but with her heart. She recognizes that the chaos was never punishment, it was initiation. The silence was not absence, it was space being made for something sacred. The letting go was not loss, it was clearing for purpose. Every pain shaped her. Every season taught her. Every tear watered something she couldn't yet name. And now, without needing to force her way forward, she simply aligns. She trusts the flow. She honors the voice inside. She walks with grace, not because she has no fear, but because she no longer bows to it. This is the woman who has met herself. This is the woman who cannot be shaken, because she is no longer held together by what the world gives her, but by what God awakened within her. She is free. She is clear. She is whole. And as she continues her journey, one spiritual shift at a time, she knows this: she is not becoming someone else. She is finally returning home, to herself,